If you are a new grad medical professional trying to navigate your student loan debt, this might be the number one metric that you need to know about because its implications for student loan management are huge. If you're new to the profession or you're still in the process of taking out student loans, please share this with a colleague who needs to know this information so that they can maximize their financial life as well before it even ends. The core metric you need to know is debt to income ratio. Now, for this purpose, we'll define it as your total student loan debt, not other debt, divided by your annual income. If you're new to the profession, you're not going to use median salary, you're going to use median starting salary, right? Or if you're a student and you're planning, your debt to income ratio would be the total student loan debt when you graduate over what you think your first year annual salary will be. Now, this is kind of a joke, but it is really genuinely true. If you have a debt to income ratio of close to 1 on graduation, you have a lot of options to you on how you manage your student loan debt. That creates happiness, right? You'll still have to navigate your student loan debt, but you'll have a whole host of options that are all reasonable. Your future employers won't really be narrowed by needing to take a certain student loan strategy, and you'll feel like it fits in your monthly cash flow. 2 to 1, things start to get tense. 3 to 1, the world's on fire. Now, there are strategies, and we're going to talk about them, but they narrow what you're able to do from an employment standpoint. And so for some people, that presents unacceptable stress or decision making that they'd much rather not have to deal with. Which is why, if you have not yet taken out student loan debt or completed a program, having a goal to have a debt to income ratio as close to 1 as possible should be of supreme importance for you because that's going to be the thing that gives you the most options. Now, let's really talk about public service loan forgiveness because this is the key option available to people with a high debt to income ratio. Now, you can also do taxable loan forgiveness, and we'll mention that, but that tends to be an actually expensive option in terms of total cost of repayment as compared to PSLF. Now, PSLF is really cool. Problem is, you have to have a qualifying employer. That is a nonprofit or government entity, 120 qualifying payments while working full time. So that's 10 years of payments, right? You can see that if you make 100K, this is a debt to income ratio of 1 to 1, 2 to 1, and 3 to 1. And the person making with a debt to income ratio of 1 to 1, they don't have that much forgiven. It's like not really a big deal to them. So if their dream job is in private practice, like go take it, right? Because $44,000 forgiven isn't a life changing amount of money. Maybe you can make more in the private sector, anyways, make up for it, no problem. But as you come over here in this 3 to 1 debt to income ratio, you start to see that because of the nature of interest, you have more forgiven tax free at the end than you even started with at the beginning. And so this is profoundly life changing for this person from a total cost of repayment standpoint and something that they kind of can't ignore. Here is why. Now, again, let's just use like super easy numbers and say that your income is 100K. Well, of course, your tax burden depends on which state you live in, but this is going to be an approximate average take home pay for that person, $6,250 a month. So then let's look at what student loan management looks like, not only in total cost of repayment, but also in monthly cash flow. Because that's what matters. That's what you feel, right? As you're like trying to get by, trying to create your budget, you want to live life, have fun, and travel. The ability for you to have cash each month, that's what you notice. So here's an example. Debt to income ratio, we'll say it's like I put 1 to 1. I think in this exact scenario, it was like 1.5 to 1, but it's not horrible, right? You can see that they're on a standard 10-year repayment plan. Their payment would have been This isn't true, actually. This isn't true. The numbers are off. We'll call this a debt to income ratio of 2 to 1 because we're using our $100,000 a year salary, right? So we're going to call this a debt to income ratio of about 2 to 1. And you'll see that their standard 10-year payment has a payment that's 33% of take home pay for them. Now, of course, the way that they determine the standard repayment plan has nothing to do with your income. It's everything to do with your loan balance, your interest rate, and the time horizon, right? Which is 10 years. So that doesn't change no matter what the income is. But you can see in this example, public service loan forgiveness does save them quite a bit of money as compared to standard repayment. They could take the taxable loan forgiveness route if they wanted that lower monthly payment each month of being on an income driven repayment plan. But the tricky thing is it costs them quite a bit more in the long term because of the way that those loans are then stretched over to 20 to 25 years. And you have this tax bomb at the end, right? So, this plan, taxable loan forgiveness, if you're not familiar, it never requires a qualifying employer. You can work anywhere. But when your money's forgiven at the end, it's not forgiven after 10 years. It's forgiven at 20 to 25. And whatever amount is forgiven is taxed as ordinary income to you. So that's the tax bomb, right? You can see in this 2 to 1, really, debt to income ratio, we're looking at a student loan payment that takes a big chunk of monthly cash outflow on a standard plan. It's possible, it's doable. If they keep their expenses low, they can get by. But remember, they have to invest too. They can't afford not to invest for retirement for 10 years. They'll end up dependent on Social Security and living at the poverty level in retirement. So, this is going to be tough from a cash flow standpoint. And it's because their debt to income ratio is scooched up close to 2 to 1. And so now they're really faced with decisions of, do I live super frugally for 10 years and go on a standard plan and pick whatever employer I want? Do I pick whatever employer I want, have a lower monthly payment, do taxable loan forgiveness, knowing I'm probably taking the most expensive path to clearing my student loan debt? Or do I narrow my employer search to qualifying employers and go with PSLF because it's the cheapest path for my student loans? You can see in this example, debt to income ratio is north of 3 to 1. Now, in this example, the numbers literally don't make sense because the total monthly payment on a standard plan exceeds $4,000 a month. So, for this person, that's 66% of their take home pay. You literally cannot live. You cannot afford rent. You cannot afford a mortgage. You definitely can't afford to invest. This person's living with their parents, right? And so, again, you put yourself in a box where now you're in this debt to income ratio 3 to 1. You probably can't afford a standard repayment plan. So the question becomes, do I force myself into a qualifying employer for PSLF? Hello, saving hundreds of thousands of dollars, quite literally. Or do I work anywhere I want, take that dream job in private practice dermatology, knowing that I'm now spending over $600,000 to pay back my student loan debt on a taxable loan forgiveness plan, right? Like, the options here kind of suck. And that's the thing about student loan debt and debt to income ratios is most people, when they're making their decisions about where to go to school, they're like, well, I don't want to be limited by the cost. I want to go to what my dream program is. It's really important to me to go to XYZ super expensive school. Okay. However, now you're on the back end. When you accrue those really high debt to income ratios, all you're doing is limiting your dream job, right? Because now you put yourself in a spot where maybe the dream job was private practice dermatology or a private cardiovascular surgical group. And now your options are, does my financial life suck for 10 years? Or do I pass up the dream job? And so by making the decision on the front end of like, well, I just really want these options, you're limiting your options on the back end. As long as you understand it, it's okay. But very few people understand it when they're making the decision. When you are applying to a program, most of us, hello, myself included, you've got laser like blinders on, laser focus on the program. You don't see past it. You don't think about your monthly cash flow. You don't think about student loan strategy. So if you're still taking out loans, or if you know someone that is, send them this and follow these steps. So first off, like, you can't figure out what your debt to income ratio is going to be if you don't know what you're going to earn. So look at where you're going to work, where you think you're going to work, and like, what do people make there in the field you think you want to be in? Starting salary. Know that. Next, figure out how much your program's going to cost you. And as you're evaluating programs, figure out the differences between them. This is so easy to do. You take your top 3 programs, you add up the total cost of tuition and all the extras, all the medical equipment, right? And then you pull up a cost of living calculator and you go, all right, how much more does rent cost or whatever in this city versus this one? And then you figure out the total cost of becoming the thing, becoming the PA, becoming the NP, the pharmacist, etc. And then you know that, right? And you can even break it down to like, if the program lengths are variable, like what's the cost per month? You'll know your total cost of school then, right? And you'll know your anticipated income, so you'll have your debt to income ratio. If it's 3 to 1, reevaluate because you're going to put yourself in a really, really tight spot. And then don't forget, scholarships, even small scholarships, make big differences. So apply, 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 apply. We have a scholarship at Strive Coaching. Go to our website, www.strivewithkristen.com, and apply for it. All of that stuff adds up. And even if it feels like, oh, getting $1,000 scholarship here or 5,000 here is a drop in the water, the bucket is made up of drops in the water. And so if you want that bucket to be smaller at the end, pay attention to the drops. All of these things create your options, right? Your student loan options at the end of the road. And the debt to income ratio right here that you end up with really determines how much flexibility you have in your early career and how much you get to make decisions based on passion rather than money. Now, I keep saying everyone should be investing as they deal with this. I'm going to link my other video, Student Loans versus Invest, to help you navigate that part. But again, if you're an early graduate, think about your student loan options in terms of debt to income ratio, and it will help you navigate the best choice.